Good morning and welcome, bienvenidos, to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene. Today we explore together Nepantla, the holy in-between, and we practice arrested time on purpose so our pace can match a neighbor's breath. Whether you're here every week, or whether you're here for the first time, whether you arrive rested or weary, may this hour be a sanctuary we make together. Se llama Poppy Lockridge, and I am this morning's worship associate. I'm a medium-height, middle-aged woman with curly graying hair, and I am most accustomed to the pronouns she, her, and ella. Bienvenidas, bienvenidos, bienvenides. All are welcome in this room. In this spirit of shared tempo, I invite us to arrive. Let us take a slow breath. Let us set down what rushes us and pick up what helps us listen across time and language.
Are we using this one? Okay. My name is Ember. I use they, them pronouns. I am wearing a clerical collar and I serve as our ministerial intern. And I am so glad that you are with us this morning. And good morning, Zoom friends. We are so glad you are also with us. If you would like to begin sharing your joys and sorrows in the chat now, we will read them later during our joys and sorrows ritual. Wow, it's been a full weekend. Who did things yesterday? I was so proud of how many people I saw at No Kings. And after No Kings, I swung by here to see Melting Ice. And then I actually went to Florence. And on our way there, we saw people lined up in Veneta. And we saw people still out with signs in Florence. And with that, I also want to name how tired so many of us are, just in mind and body and soul. And yet, what gathers us here is the knowledge that, as important as it was for us to show up yesterday, that we still show up here today in a shared desire for sanctuary. Sanctuary often begins in Nepantla, the in-between state named by Mexican American and Chicano theology. Nepantla is a threshold where lives and language meet. This word comes to us through the work of Gloria Anzaldúa, a Chicano writer and Borderlands thinker who wrote from the Rio Grande Valley, and we will hear some more of her words later today. And so come as you are with your grief and gladness, questions and resolve, the language you have today. And now I would like to invite Jasmine to the front to light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, with words from Adina Danuf and Tanya E. Marquez. And we will be reading this in both Spanish and English.
Encendemos este cáliz por la tierra,
We light this chalice for the earth,
a la cual pertenecemos.
of which we are all part.
Prometemos cuidarla
We pledge to care for what it needs
y llevarla en el corazón.
and hold it in our heart. Each week, we take time in our worship, this borderland of sacred space, to share the joys and sorrows of our community and to hold space with each other, there we go, as a loving community. In a few minutes, you will be invited to come to any of the joys and sorrows tables around the sanctuary, where you may place a stone in water as an unspoken symbol of our shared joys and sorrows. Folks are also invited to write in the book. We have additional sheets of paper if they are needed. And at the end of this time, I will share both the Zoom joys and sorrows and what has been written. And we remember that not every story fits public words. Spoken aloud, written down, carried quietly, each belongs to the shared care of this community. And I would also like to bring our attention to the testimonies that have remained after melting ice. These will be coming down today. This is your last opportunity to take a look at them. I would really welcome you to do that after the service, and I would love for us to just hold these joys and sorrows alongside of our own today. And if you are a person who could use some extra support in the days ahead, I encourage you to reach out to our lay pastoral associates just for some extra care. May we keep this tender rhythm together. We have Joy from Austin Arrowwood for completing the final stage of gender confirmation surgeries. So joining from OHSU, where he is still recovering. Joy that my neighbors took action when ICE was active. They brought out all the tamales from a Guatemalan. They bought out all the tamales from a Guatemalan man and sheltered him until he could get a safe ride home. Joy for geese flying noisily overhead for some sunshine, and to my fellow Unitarians standing strong. And joy and gratitude to be finally healing post-surgery from Chris. Mourning the death of a friend, loving thoughts for my sister Ida as she embarks on her last earthly journey. Visited the detention center in Tacoma Friday. How can we do this to our fellow humans? Sorrow and prayers for the refugees of the flooding in Alaska on the Pacific coast. Joy for the autumn colors and the brightness in rainy weather. Joy for the protests and the people who continue to show up and care. After a long struggle, Carol Machowski passed away. She was a wonderful friend and mahjong player. We will miss her in more ways than one. Joy and gratitude for the millions of people in our country and around the world rallying for democracy. Joy for beautiful autumn colors. Joy and gratitude for all the wonderful help I'm receiving for repairs on my house. Blessed with a beautiful sister. And holding my daughter Penelope and all her anxieties. We hold these joys and sorrows, spoken and unspoken. Amen.
The following reading is excerpted from To Live in the Borderlands by Gloria Anzaldúa. To live in the borderlands means you are neither hispana, india, negra, española. Ni gabacha, eres mestiza, mulata, half-breed, caught in the crossfire between camps. While carrying all 5 races on your back, not knowing which side to turn, run from. To live in the borderlands means knowing that the India in you, betrayed for 500 years, is no longer speaking to you, the Mexicanos cayu rajetas, that denying the Anglo inside you is as bad as having denied the Indian or the black. Cuando vives en la frontera, people walk through you, the wind steals your voice, you're a burra, buoy, scapegoat, forerunner of a new race, half and half, both woman and man, neither, a new gender. In the borderlands, you are the battleground. Where enemies are kin to each other, you are at home, a stranger. The border disputes have been settled. The volley of shots have scattered the truce. You are wounded, lost in action, dead, fighting back. To live in the borderlands means the mill with the razor-white teeth wants to shred off your olive red skin, crush out your kernel, your heart, pound you, pinch you, roll you out, smelling like white bread, but dead. To survive the borderlands, you must live sin fronteras, be a crossroads.
Before I start the sermon, I'm gonna just apologize for all of my Spanish pronunciation today. I practiced all of my Spanish words, and then yesterday at No Kings, I got really excited in American Sign Language, which apparently just wiped all practice that I did. Between one life and the next, my sense of time stopped behaving, and it did not feel like a Sabbath or rest, but it felt like a crossroads. I was leaving an abuser at the time, and though friends offered sofas and quiet kitchens while I rebuilt from the ground up, there was still an absence of embodied safety, of that sense of sanctuary we have been talking about today. 2 weeks later, I am carrying a folder of photocopies into the Department of Human Services in order to apply for help with food and employment, because sometimes fleeing means we leave everything behind. I remember sitting on a metal chair with a plastic clipboard biting into my hands. Stale cigarette smoke and sack lunches and copy toner and the warm metallic smell of printer dust filled my nose as I sat under humming fluorescent lights. Domestic violence is legally complicated, and these knots tighten or loosen depending on where we stand in the world. I think most of us know a room like that, even if we haven't been in that exact version of the room. We have waited at the DMV or at a clinic desk or on hold with a number that begins with music and ends with a survey. We have filled the same line 3 times while a clock decides whether the day will open or close. Because we live in a system that controls how we experience time. And when we are most rushed, we make the most errors. At the DHS office, the caseworker is reminding me that it's important to keep your address up to date. So I check the box asking if I want to update my voter registration. The room was a borderland, one counter from many worlds. People greeted each other in Spanish and English, saying names twice, asking for interpretation, necesite interprete, and the talk moved slowly. A man unfolded a consulate letter behind a pay stub, while a mother traced an address just to make sure before she walked out the door. This was not a space that gave us time. It was a manufactured time that we survived together. Voices softened, dates were repeated. I remember a small child gave me a sticker, and the room kept going while policy set the clock. This is Nepantla, the middle ground where ordinary life and imposed time meet. We learn a shared pace so bodies can breathe. Anzaldúa names Nepantla as a site of transformation, where relationship begins and a new way of relating is born. She teaches that those thresholds are teachers, and that in the friction of crossings, we practice bridge building that keep people whole. In that practice, sanctuary becomes a lived ethic of meeting in the middle so life can continue. A month later, I am still rebuilding that life, and I walk into a different office under different humming fluorescent bulbs, holding a different folder of copies, this time hoping to increase the distance between myself and a man who was still pursuing me. The woman behind that desk asked my name, then asked why I had updated my voter registration. I repeated what DHS had told me. It's important to keep addresses up to date. She then explained with a clipped tone that voter rolls are public. I no longer qualified for address protection. In order to get address protection, I would have to move again. And I would actually have to move again, becoming visible and invisible at the same time. For many of our migrant neighbors, that path is even more narrow. Anzaldúa's vision calls us to keep time at the threshold, pacing the crossing gently, so the future can arrive without being injured by hurry. Confusion and long delays around work authorization and identification often keep doors closed to jobs and housing and services. So families end up not getting help they could use while they wait for all of that paperwork to clear. In Oregon, vote by mail requires a residence address, but survivors need specific exemptions. True sanctuary holds that hurry, so trust has the space to develop, and we truly understand the choices and help available to us. It has taken me a long time to be ready to tell that particular story. And I've done a lot of work around it, and there's a lot of distance now. But when I do share that story, people often offer their own. Folks name a season when they had multiple appointments to prove the same fact over and over, when rating rooms erased half of their day, when websites timed out on the last page. And a lot of the people I talk to offer these careful confessions of privilege. We could speak the language. Some people have a car to run those errands, or a friend to watch kids. They own a printer, and so they could upload clean PDFs. And for a lot of people, especially those of us who look like me, our accents passed, we are native speakers, and our paperwork matches our name. People also name what helped in those times. A friend who knew which line to stand in for the thing that you needed. A social worker who wrote the exact phrase you needed to remember to write on your form later. A clinic interpreter who stayed 10 extra minutes to stay with you. I had worked as a peer support specialist, and I still had to learn how much I didn't know once systems collided. Offices valued different things. One prized current data, and another required privacy. One wanted to move with speed, and the other wanted to move on a schedule that ignored that clock on the wall. The collisions were specific and costly, and the gap in between was where life had to keep moving. And in that gap, I saw people truly practicing a human pace. Folks remind me of how these struggles meet and stack. Domestic violence and immigration are not the same story, but their pressures overlap. Both are shaped by paperwork and timing and the need to be seen or unseen at a given moment. When systems crumble, those cracks expose just how many people are held at the edges. A missed work shift for court becomes a write-up and perhaps even a warrant being issued. A late paycheck becomes a late rent notice. In order to get utility assistance in most Oregon counties, you actually have to already be late on your payment. And so it puts you into this constantly reactive instead of proactive kind of space. Rumors about public charge for immigrants, the knowledge that they could be pinged and nabbed simply for asking for the help that they are entitled to, keeps them and us from asking for the help that we need. In the overlap, the calendar fills with proof and the clock speeds up. And in that rush, a human pace can become the first act of care. These are shared experiences that can feel lonely inside of a single body. People whisper that they should have known better. They feel ashamed for missing a box or angry with nowhere to put it. We sit under the same fluorescent lights, but the risks are not evenly distributed. The stories are both ordinary and heavy. Anzaldua's vision calls us to keep time at the threshold. In Nepantla, we pace the crossing gently so the future can arrive without being injured by the hurry. Her autohistoria teria braids lived story with reflection, so knowledge is embodied and accountable, which is exactly what we witnessed from these testimonials during the Melting Ice exhibit, offering truth as relationship, a way of making sanctuary by letting experience hold that human pace, to translate across difference and to help new relations come into being. And our faith knows this truth, that worth is not earned by speed or fluency, that time can be blessed, that rest can be holy work. These last days have shown how much our community can hold. And feet are sore, throats are raw. I feel the unsteady exhaustion, the fray of time, the Western clock think whispering that every offering is still too small. And while I may be a good distance separated from that story and that sense of timelessness, I also live in the same 2025 as the rest of us. I know how hard and heavy and simple and ordinary these times are. And I do not say ordinary to normalize what we are living through. I say it because our most sacred acts of care are acts of rest. Yesterday, following No Kings, I stopped by UUCE to take in the melting ice exhibit, and then I went and jumped in the ocean. Because no one of us can hold it all, and we can choose rest on purpose and call it holy. Our calling is threshold work. In Nepantla, we set a human tempo and build sanctuary step by step. Our acts of care and our acts of rest can be complete. Resistance is a community that refuses to let extraction be our default. Carry this with you. Keep human time and meet people where they are. Let your steps make room for others' paces, and let others' paces teach our steps. Practice accompanimento in small ways, translating not only words but expectations, allowing help to arrive in a form that can be used, hold dates for one another, wait at doors for one another. In rooms like these, human time returns. May that tempo steady our feet, fill our lungs, and guide us through the work ahead. Amen, and so mote it be. So I had actually written an entire embodied meditation for us, and then yesterday, when I was coming back from Florence, I was thinking about what meditation is actually for. So one of the goals I set for myself last summer while I was working as a chaplain in a hospital was to learn the difference between a meditation and a prayer. And while I still think there's a lot of overlap and a lot of personal definition, here's kind of what I came to. Meditation tends to be built around a practice. And so there's a focus to that practice. And sometimes that's clearing our minds or focusing on breath or allowing ourselves to be embodied. But in the end, it still has that active purpose. And I was thinking about how embodied No Kings was and how much of that work we are all doing. Even if you're not a person who goes out and does protests in person, by being here today, you are part of that work of centering love. And so, even though I still believe that embodied work is really important, I also believe we can't force ourselves to embody dysfunction. That as we watch what is happening in our city and our nation and our world, that there needs to be a place for the grief and for a sense of surrender that comes with calling on things bigger than ourselves. So with that in mind, I would like to invite us into a time of prayer. And of course, this is an invitation. You can choose to practice something that is more meditative, or you can opt not to participate at all. And with that, I will call us into the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, God of no name and many names, I call on our collective grieving, our shared lamentation, and I offer it up to the universe, holding the parts of us that are tired from marching and speaking and organizing, holding the parts of ourselves that are holding the stories of others, the stories we heard yesterday, the stories we have been hearing for weeks. Gather our scattered attention into one small flame. And may we warm ourselves with that flame. May we warm the parts of ourselves we cannot heal alone. I am changed by the love that binds galaxies and sidewalks, that places my feet on honest ground and creates words of service in repair. When I cannot move, keep me company. When I cannot stand, direct my courage wisely. Stitch us back together across distance and difference. Make our bodies safe homes for our spirits. May grief clear a path for solidarity, and may love be our prayer. Amen. Our chalice extinguishing for today is written by Luis Valdez, and again, Poppy will be reading the Spanish, I will be reading the English, and then to further honor the diversity of language and the sensory ways we experience that, Dove will be translating the English parts into ASL.
Tú eres mi otro yo.
You are my other me.
Si te hago daño a ti,
If I do harm to you,
me hago daño a mí mismo.
I do harm to myself.
Si te amo y respeto,
If I love and respect you,
me amo y respeto yo.
I love and respect myself. And now go forth into this day, knowing that we have space to breathe, to rest, to rejoice, to embrace Nepantla, the in-between, and knowing there is more love somewhere. Amen, and so mote it be.